Hey everyone, I hope you all are safe and doing good. So in the series of learning Python programming language, in the previous video we have seen how to add attribute to your class, right? How to create your own class, how to create object, and then how to add attribute, right? Now remaining is, obviously in class we are having like attribute as well as methods. Attribute means the object, attributes are basically the things that the object has, like if I am an object, then I am having my name, my phone number, address. These are objects. And methods are the thing that the object does, like I do teach, right? So these are the methods. So now in this video we will see how to add methods to your class, right? So we have seen in the previous video init function as well, how to initialize the attributes, right? So please first watch that video and then come to this video, right? Then you will get it better, because for this, to understand this video, you need to know what is that underscore init underscore in bracket you have just passed self. What is that function, right? Okay, now this we have done in the previous video. See, the class was instructor. Okay, the class name, it should be capital I. Pascal case, the convention is Pascal case we use to name the class. But if you take small I, then it's also fine. It will not give any syntax error. But it is like the convention is basically to differentiate the class name, variable name, function name, and like this, right? Okay, now we will add methods to our class. So we are going to create a new file here, class methods.py, and let's take, we are having same example I'll be taking. We are having a class instructor, right? And now that init function, and we are passing like two parameter here. One is the name and second one we have passed, that was address. So how to assign the value? Then self dot name of the attribute is, I'm taking name, and here name. So see, this and this should be same, the parameter name and this value, this should be same. This name can be different. It is not compulsory that this name of this attribute should be same as the parameter name, right? These things we have discussed in previous video. So let's take address, and this is what address I am assigning. And if you create an object of the class instructor, then this time you need to pass, if I run this, then see, you will get an error. This instructor is missing two required positional argument, line number 5. Here we are creating an object, so you have to pass name as well as address. So I'm passing like name is equal to Jenny, and suppose address is Gurgaon. So this time it will not give any error, and if you print suppose instructor1 dot name, then it will give you Jenny. This is how we can access, right? So the self is just a keyword that bind these attributes to the argument received. So this init function would be called every time you create an object. So if you create two objects, then 2 times this init function would be called, right? So first time it would be called while we are creating this object in 5th line, while we are executing the 5th line. So self means, self is referring to the actual object now. So self is referring instructor1. So self is instructor1 at this point of time. So instructor1 dot name, whatever name you will pass Jenny, instructor1 dot address, whatever address you will pass, that is Gurgaon, right? Now if I create another object same, and instructor2 is suppose Gia. So at this point of time also this init function would be called. Every time you create an object, this function would be called every time. So now if we are calling, if this function is being called during this time, then this time the self is referring to instructor2, this object. So now self value is, you can assume like instructor2, and name value is Gia, address is same Gurgaon. So now self is instructor2 dot name, gr instructor2 dot address, Gurgaon. I hope now you got the basically the working of why we are using this self here, right? It is binding the object attribute to the argument received, right? Okay. Now we have a default also, like default attribute, that is followers, because it is not compulsory that every teacher is on self dot Instagram. So by default, rather than passing 0 0 0 for every teacher, if you have created 10 objects, then every time you will pass 0 0 0 as an argument if you write down here followers as a parameter, but set the default value. So by default you don't need to pass 0 here. Now followers would be 0 0 for every object you create, right? Or rather than this, one more way is what you can create a class object variable here. Followers is equal to 0 rather than here. So now this here, see, we are not using any self keyword, self dot follower, no, because these are outside of this init function. So this is what a class object variable. For every object that you create from this class, instructor class, the follower, this attribute would be associated to every object, and for every object the value of follower would be 0. So see, if you want to check, then if you want to print like instructor1 dot followers, then you will get 0. See, although we haven't initialized this, we are not passing any follower here, we haven't initialized here self dot follower 0. So from where this is taking the value, follower 0. For instructor2 also followers value is 0, right? Now this is what, just a quick recap of the previous one, because we are just adding the attribute, we have just added attribute. Now how to add methods? So methods are basically simple, you can say these are functions, like if same, what is the syntax of creating a function? Def function name and round bracket, and if you want to pass any parameter, just pass the parameter, right? Same, you can say that syntax is here, def function name, suppose simple I am taking display function, and if you something like this, if you put these bracket, then automatically here you will get self keyword, because this is compulsory. On every, if you call this display method on this instructor1, then the self will bind this function to this object on which you are calling this display. So at this point of time, self is instructor1. If you are calling this display function on instructor2 object, second object, then at that point of time self will become instructor2. So it will basically bind, right, the function or the method to the object on which you are calling this method. So means function becomes method when it is attached to a particular object, right? That is why we are not calling it function, we are calling it method. So here I am simply printing, like print, and suppose I print hi, that's it. This is the simplest example I am taking, right? And on instructor1, how to call this method now? If you call this, if you access this method using first object, then simply we cannot write down here like display and just call display function. No, it will give error. See, the name display is not defined in line number 11, right? So you have to attach this with the object name. So on instructor1, I want to call this display function. So instructor1 dot display, right? This is how an object can access the method of a class or attribute of a class. Object name dot, then whatever you want to access, display. Okay, if you run this, see, you are getting Jenny, hi, and see, yeah, you are getting none here. So where is the problem? Why you are getting this none? So please pause the video and try this out. Why we are getting Jenny, hi, then none? Sorry. So see, the problem is it will print Jenny. Now we are calling in print, we are calling instructor1 dot display. Now we are calling this. So control would be here, right? Now self is this time instructor1. So it will print in display. We are having just print hi. So it will print hi. Now You are printing, means whatever this will return, that thing we want to print. But here we are not writing any return statement. So if you don't write any return statement, then definitely we know every function is going to return something. If you do not write any return statement, then it will return none. So that is why it is returning none here, and we are printing none. We are getting the answer Jenny, hi, then none. So just remove this print and simply call display function on instructor1 object, right? Now let's run this. See, Jenny and hi, right? I hope you got this. Now this is the simplest example you have taken. Now suppose basically methods are basically, you know, the actions we perform on the attributes, maybe using the values of the attributes and do something, or maybe modify the attribute value and do something and return some result. That is obviously the use of methods. It is not, you know, any use like just print hi, but this is just to make you understand like how you can define a function, right? Now if you want to print, if suppose I want to call this one here, so it should print hi, I am Jenny, because instructor1 name is Jenny. So can you do this? Yes, you can pause the video and try this out. So hi, I want to print hi, I am Jenny. So from where I will get Jenny? From the name attribute. In name attribute of instructor1 I have Jenny. So from the name attribute just fetch the value. So directly if you write name here, so obviously you have to use f string. Then what do you think? You will get Jenny or not? Let's run this. See, it is giving an error. Here display line number 12, line number 8, hi, I am, this name is not defined. Name is not defined because it's just a variable, and we are using here not just simple variables, attributes. You have to attach this variable to a specific object. For which object you are using this name? Obviously instructor1. So rather than obviously instructor1 dot name, here you will write self1 dot name, self dot name, because here self is referring to that particular object on which you are calling this display function. So here self1 is instructor1. So automatically it will fetch the name from instructor1. Hi, I am Jenny. Right? I hope you got this. So the self keyword you will get, you know, many times within this class only, not outside of the class we are using self. We are using within this class only self, right? And my name is Jenny, and suppose I want like I teach Python. So I want to pass a parameter, an argument, as an argument what subject I teach. So for that, suppose in display I want to pass like I teach Python. So for this obviously you need some parameter to fetch, store that value, that string. So I'm just taking a parameter name, subject name, right? Hi, I am the name, and I teach. Now how you will fetch that thing? I teach, the subject name, the Python. It should print hi, I am Jenny and I teach Python. So you can pause the video and try this out. Okay, I hope you have done this. Now you just need to write down here subject name. No need to write down self dot subject name. First let's run this and see. I am Jenny and I teach Python. Why you are not writing here self dot Python, dot subject name? If you write this thing, let's run this and you will see, you will get a error message. Like in line number 12, here you are calling this, and then in line number 8 means here you are defining this function, right? Now what this is, this line, an attribute error, it's an attribute error. Instructor object has no attribute subject name, because when you access self dot like this, then this should be an attribute, because I am using self dot name, because name is an attribute of that object. It's an attribute in this class, but subject name is not any attribute. We have only two attribute, name and address, right? So how this self can bind, because this can only bind the attribute, this attribute to that particular object, but subject name is not any attribute, we are just passing an argument. So simply you will pass Python and it will take the value from subject name Python. No need to write down here self dot subject name. I hope now you got the difference why I am writing here self dot names and here just subject name. We are not passing any name here and we are still getting name Jenny, right, because it is an attribute of the object, and we are passing subject name and we are getting obviously the subject name, right. So now if you don't know, like maybe subject name, if I pass like Python, simply Python, then it will give error. Python is not defined in line number 12, right, because this is expecting a string as an argument. So like the proper way is you can just write down here in comments like hash, and this will accept subject name as a string, right, or expect a string as a subject name. So to define that thing you can write down here that proper thing, so that if anyone see your program then he or she will get, yeah, they have to pass string, right. So this should be string here. And if suppose if you want to update the follower count, right, so if suppose I take another function def update followers, right, and obviously it will be self, and on instructor 1 I am calling this function on instructor 1 dot update follower, right, and here I just pass a name. It means that person has started following instructor 1. So the follower count of instructor 1 would be increased by 1, right. So the follower count of self dot followers of that object on which we are calling this function. So definitely you will write here self dot followers count will increased by 1, right. So here I am passing suppose name like Payal, means Payal has started following instructor 1 and instructor 1 is Jenny, means Payal has started following Jenny. So Jenny's followers would be +1, right. And now if you print like instructor 1 dot followers, then see what you will get. Okay, it is giving an error because see in line number 17 here we are passing instructor type error. It takes one positional argument but two are given. Okay, to accept, obviously to accept this Payal you have to give up obviously the parameter name, because one is self and one is Payal. For Payal, to accept Payal you have to give a parameter name, follower name. See now, hi, I am Jenny, I teach Python and 1. Now follower count of Jenny is 1. At starting it was 0. Now see you have updated the attribute, right. So this also you can do if suppose I have one more instructor 2, and on instructor 2, for instructor 2 I am just printing followers, then it will give 0. See, 1 was for instructor 1 and at last we are getting 0, so that is for instructor 2, because on instructor 2 you haven't called this update follower function, right. If you call this update follower function on instructor 2 as well, like instructor 2 dot update follower, and suppose Jenny has started following instructor 2, instructor 2 is Jia. So let's run this. Now both are having 2 2, obviously you have to, okay, still 0 because we are printing here. So after update, after calling this update, you have to print instructor 2 dot follower, right. See now both 1 and 1, for both it's 1 and 1, right, follower count. So this is how you can add methods, and so you can, I hope you got how to add methods. And when you use self dot the name and like without self, when you can write down any variable name or attribute name. Sorry, this is not attribute, this is just a variable, right? Or argument you are passing. Fine. So now you can try this out. Like maybe you can update for, maybe you can create 2 more objects and you can update the followers, right? Or maybe you can try to print like follower count as well as following count. If I started, like someone, Jia started following me, so my follower count would be 1 and Jia's following count would be 1, right? Followers and following. If you are on Instagram, then you know this thing, right? Followers and following, 2 things are there. So you can play around with this code. So based on this, we will be discussing one exercise in the next video. So now, in the next video, then bye bye. Take care.